In the last video, we looked at how to create an app from scratch with the entire app scaffolding. All the architecture of the app, including the front end, the back end, the API, the security testing, the unit integration, functional testing, the entire app was created by Cursor. I'll show you the final structure, but for today, what we're going to do is we're going to continue with our features. So instead of creating an entire app and giving our code generation tools large prompts, we're going to focus on creating prompts that are specific to each feature. For this, we're going to utilize the features inside LaunchpadAI, and I'll show you one other tool called the rules stack that is particularly helpful when creating prompts for feature development. So for today, let's head back out to LaunchpadAI and continue from where we left off. This is our product as we have created it. And if we click on it, and if we look at our features, we'll see that we have 3 features. We're going to start enriching each feature and start implementing that in Cursor. But before we do that, there's something important I'd like to mention, and that is the rules stack. If you go into the public rules here in general rules, you will see that there are already system-defined rules, and each rule stack is an extra context that you can provide either to your application creation or feature creation process during the enrichment. You can click on any one of these rule sets, and you will see that they are organized by design principles, coding standards, brand guidelines, accessibility requirements, performance requirements, compliance rules, and quality assurance processes. If you go to My Rule Stacks, you can create as many rule stacks as you want, and it just will put you through the same wizard that we've seen before, and you can just keep adding them here. And you will want to start doing this because when you start vibe coding, and especially as the app starts growing, you will start seeing patterns where these tools start stumbling. So every time there's an error, you will want to probably come back here to your custom rules and codify that and tell the tool what to do or what not to do, what to avoid. So this is a good place to add these rules, and you can continue. And in the last step, there's custom rules. So you can add as many rules as you need for any particular purpose. So we're going to abandon this wizard. But one thing you can do is you can go and browse the public rules. And in this case, since we're building a Next.js 15 app, I'm going to click this Vibe Coding Next.js 15. This is a collection of the most common rules. And what you can do with this is use as a template. So just like you can do with products or prompts, you can just copy this to your own collection. So I'll go ahead and do that. And now in my rules stack, I have this copied to my workspace to under my product, which is the Fleet Share Pro. And I can make modifications to this rule stack as I need to. If I feel something is missing or something is overdone, I can come here and click this edit rule stack and go to the step where the rules are defined, and I can click a X and get rid of any one of these rules or add more by typing it here. So again, we're going to abandon this, not save it. For now, we have 85 rules here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use these rules in our feature definitions. So let's go ahead. Now that we have saved this in my rules, I'm going to go back to my products, select my Fleet Share Pro, go under my features, and now with the list of features, what I'd like to start doing is implement these features in Cursor. But before we do that, if you recall last time, we just created them as bare bone features to be truly representative of the architecture of the larger app. Now we have to give them a body. So let's start with the user authentication. And click on the user authentication. You'll see that it's a very brief feature. So there's not much detail here just yet, but click this edit button. And on the edit button, don't change this information. Go to the PRD tab. So this is the important tab here. Now we're going to add a lot more detail. So this is our first initial PRD that we entered when we started. And here, you would want to start with generate content suggestions. Of course, you can write your own feature if you have it written somewhere, or if it's in a Jira or any other product management solution, you can copy and paste it from there. But we can also just briefly mention what the feature is and use AI to enrich it. So what we're going to do is we're going to generate some ideas based on this text initially. So now we're asking, using the OpenAI GPT-4 Mini, which by the way, you can change to any model you like, and you can bring your own custom models here to the system, is in what ways we can enrich this PRD. And here are some of the suggestions. Define user roles, detail email and phone verification processes, specify technical requirements for the validation, clear acceptance criteria, and dependencies. So these are some of the suggestions. You can also type your own instructions and then send it. So if I type something, I can also send that to AI and enrich this prompt. But I'll go ahead and start with detail email and phone verification processes. Let's add a little bit more meat to that. We want our feature to be detailed so that the coding tool doesn't have to make as many assumptions. Once we click that, now our content is being sent to the AI. And now if we click on the preview here in this editor, we will see that we have a much richer feature definition. Now we see that we have steps for the user registration, the email formatting, the expiration of the verification link. You can always go back and edit these if you don't like them or they don't fit your needs. Obviously, you can come back and change it. Driver's license verification, role-based access control. I mean, there is quite a bit of detail in this PRD already, but there are other suggestions here too as well. So let's go ahead and look at the other suggestions. Maybe the specify technical requirements for the validation or clear acceptance criteria. Let's go ahead and add some acceptance criteria inside the PRD and wait for that also. The thing about these buttons here, the suggestions they're generally additive. They will take the content already and add those suggestions on top of it. They will not destruct or remove content. So here we will see that there is probably some acceptance criteria that was added as a section. Okay, so we're in a pretty good state here, in my opinion. Next step here is to inject our context. Just like we injected our context into the prompt for the app scaffolding, we'll inject some context here into this feature definition prompt. So click this inject context button, and on this modal, what we want to inject here now is not the product, not the business stack. We're done with them. Our application context is already set, although you can inject anything you want pretty much, but we're interested in our rules. And the only rule that I have right now is the vibe coding rules for Next.js 15. And here you can preview the variables here and you can see what's going to get injected into our prompt. So I will just go ahead and inject this. And if I hit the preview for full screen, we will see that here are the rules that we have injected into this prompt. So we're going to tell a cursor, follow these rules and then implement this feature following the rules. What I found with vibe coding tools like Cursor is that if you don't specify these rules every single time, it forgets to read its own .rules.cursor rules folder. It ignores them. It falls back into the model training, and the model training often is composed of public GitHub repos that may or may not include the details that you need. So it's a good practice to include these rules. Although it becomes a little longer, it doesn't really matter at the end because this is our PRD and we can store this. And usually you can also move these rules to the end of the PRD. So what you can do here is you can grab them. If you go to the editor, you can just grab these rules like this if you don't want to litter the initial part of the PRD. So you can just come back and paste them to the end. So it doesn't really matter where they are, they will be considered. So here is how your PRD will look now. So you have your overview, you have your features, you have your acceptance criteria, and then you start using your rules. Okay, cool. So this is our PRD, and we're going to move ahead. Everything else stays the same. We'll continue. We will update our feature. And now our user authentication feature, if you go and take a look at it, now it has a lot more details, including our rules. So one thing you can do here, obviously, is you can copy this and you can create your PRD file yourself, or you can download this as a markdown file. What we're going to go ahead and do is I will copy this contents and then open Cursor, and I'll show you what Cursor's already been doing here. So let's get rid of this package.json. But here is our folder structure from last time. As you can see, we already have a docs folder per the specs. And then we have the public folder, security folder with the headers, policy, source folder for the app, and test, very important. End-to-end fixture integration, all these folders were created, and package.json looks great. If you look at the versions, we have Next.js 15.3, React 19, and all the Radix and Shatson libraries. So really, really good, along with all the types. So the app scaffolding job was done successfully by Cursor. And now what we're going to do is under the docs folder, we're going to create another folder called PRD. And inside that PRD folder, we'll just create a new file, and I'm going to call that auth.md. And I will paste my PRD file from LaunchpadAI. So this is my auth.md file. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to prompt Cursor to implement this into a feature. So one thing you can do here, of course, is you can come and prompt Cursor to start implementing this feature, and you can compare the results. But what I like doing, again, just similar to the first video that I showed you, is actually use Rucode's architect mode to take the PRD and create an architecture implementation for the feature. So this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to open Visual Studio Code and Rucode. So this is Rucode. And inside Rucode, let me just grab this file. So inside docs and PRD, I'm going to open it first. Once I open the file, I can refer to it through Rucode. So now in Rucode, I can just go ahead and say, create the architecture for this, or I can just grab a prompt for this from LaunchpadAI. So that's what I'm going to do. Going back to the prompt templates, there is a prompt called Single Feature Architecture Generation. And this is for, again, vibe coding. So what this does is tells Rucode or Visual Studio Code, Copilot, or Cursor to take a PRD and create an architecture. So I'm going to copy this, go back to Rucode, paste this, and at the end, I will say use at, and here add file, auth.md. Okay, so auth.md will be the last line. You can add it to the beginning, it doesn't matter. What it's going to do is it will create the architecture based on this PRD. You will also want to change it to architect mode. A lot of times having a detailed prompt like this is probably not necessary for Rucode's architect mode, especially because it already understands its job so well. But I find it easy and handy to have this kind of a single feature architecture generation prompt ready. So I can use it in Cursor, or I can use it in Copilot or any other tool. So with that, I'm just prompting for creation of the architecture based on this PRD. So let's go ahead and do that. So one thing Rucode does is it's already referring to the architecture plan that it created earlier. So it has reference to what we're creating. And then it's going to read this file as well and then create the architecture for this. Because when it says on the PRD provided, it already has access to the auth.md. Okay, now we're going to get some questions. I need to understand the specific third-party service in the PRD. And in this case, use a mock simulator driver license validation, integrate with Jumio or Onfrio's driver's license, use AWS services, integrate with Verif. For now, let's just pick a mock simulated drivers validation service for development. And now Rucode will start creating the architecture document specific for this authentication PRD. Now we see the user stories We see the acceptance criteria. All of this comes from the injected documents that we created. So let's look at the PRD architecture document. We have an API layer, we have the client layer, we have the registration form, email verification, phone verification, license uploading. So it looks pretty comprehensive here. Let's look at the API layer. We have the auth API routes, we have the Supabase Postgres connection, row level security, that's really good, email service, SMS, license verification. So all in all, it's a pretty good architecture at this point. Okay, we even have rate limiting. That's really good. We have auth error codes, definition in the interfaces. We have the front-end architecture now. We have the routes, the routing. That's really good. The login, registration, verify email, dashboard, owner, renter, fleet manager. We have state management with auth state, and it's using a use reducer for this. Okay. React context plus use reducer. We didn't specify any state management for React, and it's just using the default React state management. But at this point, you have the choice again to reprompt or add more details, such as if you'd like to use something like Jutai or Redux or anything else for state management like Zustand perhaps. It's continuing. Here's the security headers. So this is really important. We emphasized it in the architecture creation. This is where RuCode shines when it comes to incorporating the original architecture document into the feature architecture documents as well. So we are seeing that in action. And now we see the entire file structure. So here's under app, we have auth, we have dashboard, we have API, we have components, we have lib. This is wonderful. This is just wonderful. Let's see another question. I've created the comprehensive feature. So what do you want to do? So let's see, save the architecture document. That's all we need at this point. We just want to save it under docs architecture, auth feature, architecture MD. We're going to see the document saved under docs. Okay, here's the saved document, auth feature architecture. It's still being created. But once this finishes, then we're going to move over to Cursor and provide two assets to Cursor. We're going to provide the PRD and we're going to provide the architecture. So that's great. Cursor now has all the information needed to create this feature in code. RuCode also creates interaction diagrams. So this is a sequence diagram for the auth sequence. As we can see, we have the field registration form. We have a post request to the API routes to register. Then a new record is created in the database. There's a verification email sent using the email service. That's really good. Then the verify email service gets sent for email verification. Then the phone number, SMS for phone number verification, update state license or validate state license, upload. These are all great because these depict the various routes in the system. So this is a great sequence diagram depicted in the document as well. Let's see what else is here. Here is the auth provider component architecture. That's also really good with the registration flow and the login flow. So the verifications all happen during the registration phase. Once the user is registered, everything is verified. After that is just the sign in and sign out flow, as well as the forgot password. Okay, so the document is still being created. It's still just writing the code. Okay, so it is done. And at this point, we can just open the preview and take a look at this document. First of all, it is very, very comprehensive. It is close to 1,000 lines of code. And let's take a look at the actual preview. And here we have the sequence diagrams. We have the tables. We have other pertinent information about how to create the entire architecture, and everything looks pretty good. There is a cutoff at the end. And when you see cutoffs like this, you can come back and reprompt it to finish the document, because this auth reducer and a couple other actions were kind of cut off, and it will continue writing from where it left off. Again, this is a model failure, but it does happen sometimes. So it's a good opportunity for you to reprompt, review your architecture document and reprompt, and Roo code will fix it. It will continue from where it left off. And this document may as well go over 8,000 lines, well over 1,000 lines. Okay, so we have the auth feature architecture and we have the auth MD. And by the way, it's a good idea to rename this to auth PRD because even the names do matter here. So this is the auth PRD and the other one is auth feature architecture. And I'm going to rename this to auth architecture also. So there is no need for feature. Okay, so we have two files in two separate folders. Now I'm going to open Cursor. And in Cursor, I will close this. And basically what I'll do is grab these two files and bring them over here, drag them into my prompt. And I'm still in agent mode. And I'm still using Claude for Sonnet in thinking. And I will say, implement the auth feature per the PRD and architecture provided. That's the only thing I need to specify at this point because everything else is included in these two documents. The PRD lists all the features, the acceptance criteria, how it should work, and the architecture lists all the technical requirements that must be met in this coding exercise. At this point, again, let the dogs out, grab your coffee, enjoy your afternoon. Of course, Cursor will execute for 25 requests, then it will ask you to continue. But this process may take for a feature like this a few hours with the failures and everything by the time you fix them. But at the end of the day, you are implementing a fairly sizable feature, authentication, and these user tables, login, verification. These are probably one of the cornerstones of any big SaaS application or any SaaS application. And so having a couple of hours in fixing and finishing everything by one person, even though you put a little bit time in the prep phase and the product phase and everything, is still a sizable efficiency gains compared to if you were to traditionally just code this by yourself or delegate this to your team. So at this point, Cursor is analyzing the files first. It thought for 16 seconds. So this is good. Sometimes I like going and looking at the thought process here because we're using the Claude for thinking model. So, and I see some of the actions it's getting ready to take. So database schema, API routes, front-end components, auth provider, protected routes, types and interfaces, validation schema, utils and helpers. This is everything that's needed, again, at this stage of the game. There was something cut off at the Roo code level. Perhaps some of the tests, maybe the integration, the UI tests were cut off. You may want to reprompt that later on. But at the end of the day, once you get the core feature working, it's easy to add on top of that tests or security tests or any other either restrictions or extensions to the feature. If you missed a key feature, let's say you want another verification, physical verification, you can add that as an extra feature later on because the core features are now working, your tables are working. It's much easier for Cursor to go and modify a table, add a column, change the column type, or add a few more screens or routes, API routes, then start everything from scratch. So keep that in mind that a lot of the changes later on will be additive changes. You will likely be creating these features as modifications to the original feature. So it's good to have the original PRD handy. That's why we saved it along with the rules and everything. And later on, you can come and refer back to it and say, this was the original feature. This is the modification I'm making to that feature. Now go ahead and implement it. And that way, Cursor has a complete history of what was done, what's being done right now. It doesn't have to start from scratch because trust me on this point, if you have to go and reprompt Cursor or any other tool every time, it does forget where it started from. Even if you have a local history file, even if you have a log file, even if you use an MCP server to keep a track of what was done, that manual track in history and context that is provided during the prompting is invaluable. I find myself having to do that. I used to do that manually. Now I'm trying to automate it. Now Cursor is starting to implement the TypeScript types and interfaces. As you can see, we are starting with the user interface and then the registration details. And from here on, it will go on to create the entire folder structure. Like I said, in a couple of hours time, that's usually how long it takes for large features. You'll have the entire architecture created, the app working very likely. You will have to set up your local database or use a hosted solution for Supabase. If you're going to use local, I highly recommend using a Docker container and run your local instance. So that's the easiest way to get started with Supabase. Or you can also use their free plan for some of the options and the edge functions. That's also a possibility, but it's up to you. But you'll need to have a running database because these interfaces will require that. So at this point, you're ready. Cursor is creating your app. You can enjoy yourself. You can come back, check, fix the issues, run the app. When you find any problems, you can reprompt Cursor to fix the problems, and life is good. Okay, so that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this session on how to create one feature. We had created 3 features originally. So basically the workflow is the same. You would go back, enrich the feature, add your rules or anything else that you want to inject it, copy that, and bring it over to Rue code or an architect mode inside Cursor or any other code generation tool. Create your architecture diagram or the architecture document, then pass the PRD and the architecture to Cursor and actually generate the code. It's a multi-step process. It does take a little bit more time, but you will save so much more time on the back end from not having to debug and not having to go through a million issues with these code generation tools. This is a fraction of the time that you will spend upfront creating these artifacts. So hopefully after using it for a while, you'll agree with me. If you have any experiences to share, please post in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next one.